Welcome to the Justia Legal Guides video channel. Today, we will talk about criminal law. Being arrested or just being suspected of a crime can be nerve-wracking. Even if you don't spend a long time behind bars, a criminal conviction can change the course of your life. It can affect your ability to get things like a job, an educational degree, or a place to live. This makes it critical to do what you can to avoid a conviction. There's a lot to discuss in criminal law, but we'll cover three main areas. First, we'll give you an overview of what crimes look like. Second, we'll talk about what the prosecutor needs to do to get a conviction. Third, we'll talk about some ways that defendants can fight their charges. So, what is a crime? In very broad terms, a crime can occur when a person does something that the law says that they shouldn't do. For example, you can't punch someone or steal their stuff. It can also occur when a person doesn't do something that the law says they should do. Child neglect is an example of this type of crime. People who are convicted of crimes face certain consequences. They may need to pay a fine, they may spend time behind bars. Sometimes they can get probation, which means that they can stay out of jail if they follow certain rules for a certain time. About half the states still have the death penalty, but it's very rarely used. Some crimes are a lot more serious than others. For example, kidnapping someone is much worse than stealing from a convenience store. Laws generally divide crimes into two main categories: misdemeanors and felonies. Misdemeanors are less serious. These usually result in less than a year of jail time if somebody gets convicted. Felonies are more serious crimes. These usually result in a year or more of jail time after a conviction. Before we go any further, here's one key tip. If you're under arrest or under suspicion, you should not talk to the police. You may be convinced that you haven't done anything bad, and you may be right. Still, trying to clear your name by telling law enforcement your side of the story can make things worse instead of better. Get an attorney and talk to them. Don't talk to the police. Next, let's talk about the elements of a crime. In other words, how does the prosecutor get a conviction? Generally speaking, most crimes have an act requirement and a mental state requirement. In other words, the prosecutor needs to show that the defendant did or didn't do something. They also need to show that they had a certain state of mind when they did or didn't do it. For example, a prosecutor might need to prove that the defendant intended to do something. Other crimes might require showing that they were reckless or very careless. In most cases, a prosecutor needs to prove every element of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. This is a very high threshold for a prosecutor to meet. They need to have strong evidence on their side. One way for a defendant to fight a charge involves saying that the evidence against them isn't good enough to show that they're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. There are often other defenses that might work, though. We'll talk about those next. This brings us to the third part of the discussion: defenses to crimes. There are several types of defenses. One type of defense involves saying, more or less, I didn't do it. This means that one or more elements of the crime aren't there. For example, this might involve attacking the mental state requirement. Let's say that someone got arrested for larceny, a type of theft, because they took their friend's cell phone. Larceny usually requires an intent to permanently deprive someone else of their property. If the defendant can show that their phone looks the same as their friend's phone, and they took their friend's phone by accident because they thought it was their own phone, they can probably beat the larceny charge because they didn't have the required intent. Another type of defense essentially involves saying, I did it, but I had a really good reason for doing it, so I shouldn't be punished. Self-defense is a common example of this type of defense. It usually comes up in cases involving violent crimes. Maybe the defendant punched someone and broke their nose. That looks like a crime at face value. But what if the other person had their hands around the defendant's neck and was trying to choke them? The law generally says that the defendant shouldn't be punished for punching the other person in that case. There's yet another type of defense that essentially involves saying you didn't play by the rules. Before we talk about how this works, let's take a step back for a moment. The US Constitution gives certain rights to all Americans. Many of the most famous constitutional rights are in the first 10 amendments, which are called the Bill of Rights. Several amendments in the Bill of Rights specifically protect criminal defendants. For example, the Fourth Amendment puts limits on searches and seizures by law enforcement. The Fifth Amendment says you can't be forced to be a witness against yourself. This led to the famous Miranda warnings that suspects get when they're arrested. The Sixth Amendment gives the defendant a right to an attorney, among other things. Now, let's talk about how this might affect a criminal case. If the police don't pay attention to these rights, evidence that they get from violating them can be thrown out. This may seem like a small thing, but it can be huge in some cases. For example, let's say that the defendant was charged with drug possession after the police found drugs at their home. If that search and seizure wasn't done within the limits of the Constitution, the defendant can ask the court to throw out the evidence of the drugs. This might make it really tough for the prosecutor to get a conviction. Thanks for watching this overview of some key issues in criminal law. If you'd like to learn more, check out the Justia Legal Guide on this topic. If you want to talk to a lawyer, you can use the Justia Lawyer Directory to find criminal defense attorneys in your area. We wish you the best of luck in resolving any legal issues that you encounter. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more Justia legal guides and law practice videos. See you in the next video.